Hello and welcome to today's episode of Dope Conversations. I have my man Keith Collins the second. Do we do the second or
The
junior?
second.
So Keith, I'm a junior. You're the second. We'll talk about that in a minute. So we're talking today on Dope Conversations with my friend Keith about scaling businesses, building legacies, and recruiting with real purpose. Keith and I were just talking off camera about some of the recruiting. Keith is a master recruiter in what he does. We're going to talk about that. Keith is someone who isn't just growing a business, he's building an army of entrepreneurs across Minnesota and beyond. Keith is the district manager for Farmers Insurance District 54 and a president's council level leader. But what makes Keith really different is this. He's on a mission to have an agency in every single one of Minnesota's 87 counties with a goal of hitting 1 billion in premium across his district. That's not just growth, that's legacy level impact. And so what Keith and I are going to talk about today is one, Keith is in the insurance space. I know we have people that follow the show in the insurance space. I know we have people in the home service space that deal with the other side of the insurance space. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But then also just what it's like to hire, train, empower, and retain leaders, managers, and staff. So Keith, very happy to have you today, my
Man,
friend.
that what an intro. I need you with me at all times. Like that is the hype man right there.
I am fortunate in my life to have a little bit of help. And as we continue to, outside of that camera of mine that like follows me around
The,
on
the
the thing, that's not my TV. I was telling Keith this is just a MacBook that they bought for the show. I don't know why it does it, but it makes it interesting. Um, so Keith, where I wanted to start is where did the vision of 87 counties and 1 billion in premiums, like where did that goal really come from?
yeah, I think it really rooted from just thinking bigger, right? Because at first it was like, okay, I want to make sure we get 10 proteges graduated, and it was little goals, right?
Yeah.
And then I really like went to, okay, where do I want to be 5, 10 years from now? And where do I want this to be where it'll make an impact? So much so, and you probably heard this because you and I absorb a lot of content and want to design it. And it's like making sure you can fit everybody's dreams inside your dreams is the biggest thing that I'm like. I'm a big follower of Dan Martell, and I know he says that a lot. So it's like, okay, and the goal is subject to change too, right? So it might become even bigger in time. But that's where I'm at right now with everything because I want to make sure, heck, everybody on my team, every one of the entrepreneurs that I'm working with, coaching, making sure they're getting up and going, making sure that all their goals are hit. So I got to be sure that I have a goal that hits all theirs.
So Keith, you recruited over 250 agency owners. What traits do you look for initially in someone that's going to succeed? Like I know we've done different things like disc analysis, Myers-Briggs. We're actually really big on like the Clifton Strengths test. Sometimes you can involve stuff like that in hiring. Most times, like through the interview process, you're not necessarily investing someone in the test. What
Right.
traits do you really look for in somebody, or where's like a signal that someone's going to be successful?
Well, so we use DISC here and DISC through Ideal Traits. Ideal Traits is an amazing program, by the way. If you guys ever see it for recruiting, whether you're in the home industry, insurance, wherever, Ideal Traits is the bee's knees. They give a DISC profile, and it basically tells you, spells it out for somebody like myself. It makes it very simple. Hey, salesperson. Hey, sales leader, closer, right? And it tells you right on there. It's like you most likely want to hire this person, or they'd be better fit for a different role, right? So if they're perfectionist, organizer, they might be better fit for the detail-driven roles rather than a sales role.
So, Keith,
Oh, sorry.
oh no, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say when I'm talking to somebody, this is probably gonna sound very archaic, but you can usually tell when you're talking to somebody to if because my job isn't really interviewing and it's not like vetting, it's more so describing this opportunity and making sure it's a good mutual fit, right? So
Sure,
whether it's an
sure.
agency owner, whether it's a producer or a protege, which is like a mentee of an agent, just making sure, hey, this is going to be hard. It's simple, but it's hard, right? Sales isn't easy, and if it is, somebody's doing you a disservice. So,
And just go to like setting expectations. I think it's a huge thing in hiring, in training, in sales is like a lot of times when we have expectations of something and they don't happen, it's usually a big letdown. And in the communication of those expectations, kind of takes me to this next question, Keith, is like, so for those of us that have sales teams or positions in our company that are like commission based, how do you shift someone's mindset from like being an employee instead to almost like being their own business owner? Because when you have commission or compensation attached to any seat, it's like they are truly in control of their own destiny, at least financially.
Right. And I think that comes from like I just hearing you talk and it's speaking with conviction instead of convincing, right? I don't think you can sway anybody. I think you just have to show them the way. You need to show them, hey, this is the lifestyle. Yeah, it has trade-offs where you might be investing a lot of money. You may be putting in long hours, but here's the freedom and autonomy of our industry at the same time. So that it again, it goes to like showing them in real time, hey, this is the opportunity. I'm living the opportunity and speaking it with conviction rather than convincing.
Do you have any like, is there training internally or communication? Because I know like people that you bring on that can sell all different types of insurance policies, right? Auto, home, like everything, right?
Yep.
Is there any training around like how to communicate with small business owners or specifically like home service people? I know we get like a bunch of like roofing people or other home service industries that like watch this stuff.
Yeah, there's so much training out there. So there's part University of Farmers, top notch. We have other training partners that we partner with, like Weaver Sales Academy, Insurance Sales Lab, that just make it so I should say formulaic. They make the sales, they spell out the psychology, they break down parts of the sales process, like everything from a call, the six parts of a call, right? And Vlad Churchenko, which he's killing it as a farmer's agent, so shout out to him. It's just these guys got it down to a science. There's no new ideas. It's like, hey, practice what's working, model then modify.
So I was reading somewhere about like how being a business owner, especially when you get into those couple years as you start like delegating tasks and getting things off your plate, it's like many business owners become the bottleneck. What systems do you help teach agents or new business owners to scale like without burning out or getting in their own way?
It definitely comes down to selling policies themselves, right? I find so, in our industry in particular, so many people, especially if they were recruited 10, 20 years ago, they were taught like sell, 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 sell harder, and then sell a little bit beyond that. And today, really what we're trying to establish is a business culture where they're delegating the selling, right? And I think that's the hardest thing for an agent to let go because they view it as, oh, well, if I sell a policy, that's the highest ROI. When you really got to teach them, hey, that's one of the lowest ROIs you can have in your agency. Because if you're selling the policy, you're burning up time to recruit. Maybe you're burning up time to install a new marketing system. The next big thing that can really help your agency, instead, you're doing a transaction rather than a transformation of the agency.
I love how that relates to all business. It's like you've heard before, like, like stepping over a dollar to pick up a dime or whatever.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like trying to understand or hold ourselves accountable as business owners, as entrepreneurs, where it's like, am I making a 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year decision in my business or with something I'm doing? And one of these guys, yeah, for anyone that knows me well, is like knows I'm on some hippie woo-woo stuff sometimes. And one of these guys that I worked with last year out of California was talking about it's the pattern interruption. We all know our traits, we all know our tendencies, we all know our strengths, or the things that we like defer to just in our day-to-day processes. One really powerful thing that I work on is like the pattern interruption. When you see yourself going to something that's just like a little easier, it just makes a little more sense, or something you're comfortable with, it's about like that pause, stopping yourself and realizing, and this could be in a sales process, this could be in a communication with your significant other, one-on-one with a team member, like any of it, where it's like having the ability to stop yourself and interrupt a pattern. Keith, similar to what you were saying, right? It's not just
Yeah.
about the policy. It can be about like a longer decision that would have more, help your agency, help your business have more longevity. But I think one of the things that a lot of us, because we get moving so fast and we're so reactive, we don't give ourselves permission to like stop and
Hmm.
pause and recognize when we're falling into a comfortable habit. And like the work that you do every day to break these things is not like, oh, I woke up, drank my coffee this morning, and I'm completely different because I made a change. It all starts with those tiny little pattern interruptions. And that becomes habit. And now, after interrupt patterns over and over, like a habit changes. And so that kind of hit me with what you were saying.
Well, and it goes to like too, if you can surround yourself with people that will call out those patterns, because I mean, they're called blind spots for a reason, right? And so I luckily my team calls me out and like, hey, you're too in the minutia, because I personally I love the sourcing aspect where I'm like, hey, I want to get volume to find people, and they'll call me out like, hey, you're going too hard in this. You need to offset this part to somebody else.
Well, it's one of the strengths or characteristics, Heath, of like great leaders. When we read about, like understanding people that came before us, and we're not always trying to reinvent the wheel. One of the things that I've found, and it sounds like you've had some of the same realizations, is like just giving people permission to call you out. Giving
Oh, yeah.
people permission, just call you on your bullshit, call you on when you're wrong. I always talk about in like our leadership meetings and our team meetings, like, look, I don't need to be right. I just need someone to be right. Like giving that permission or creating atmospheres where people know like it's not like you can't be questioned as the manager or the boss. Like, give suggestions, call me out if I'm getting excited and getting everyone hopped up because I'm convincing, but that the idea doesn't make sense.
100%. 100%.
So, Keith, another thing that we had talked about is like you say your leadership style is rooted in Midwest values. How does that show up in practicality or like in your coaching or your day to day? For anyone that doesn't understand, like Midwest nice, wave them across the street, always use your blinker, just whatever you've heard about it, Key. Like, how does that relate into what you do in your day to day?
Yeah, and just for ultimate clarity, so I grew up in upstate New York, and they're the first persons to bluntly, aggressively call you out, right?
Opposite of Midwest nice.
Right, where I think in Midwest you can do, I think it helps a lot because I've always gone compliment, question, or opportunity, and then another compliment, right? So if we have an opportunity, what I don't want to do is just say, hey, man, we're doing this really bad. We need to get this improved. I want to say, that is like, this is really, we've done really good at this part. Hey, I see some opportunity in this part. Like, what would your ideas be? And kind of always include the person and then let them know, like, hey, man, this is going to be so awesome once we get this going. And I appreciate you taking ownership here. So, like, kind of present that formula in there. I've always found the more you can include somebody in on both the problem and the solution, and it's their idea, like, right, especially when you're coaching an entrepreneur, right? You don't have any authority over their business or anything like that. When it comes down to it, you got to partner with them and say, hey, here, we're trying to get more sales. We're trying to have better marketing. You're seeing this, and I think it's awesome that you're willing to do this. So what would it take to get to the next level? Right. And if they have the idea, they're going to act on it 10 times more than if I send an email out with the latest and greatest.
So, like, you're big on ROI metrics tracking in your role. What are the top two or three numbers? And take this to agents or Keith, even like any business owner, like what are the top metrics that as a manager, as a coach, that you're tracking in the sales process?
So two big things, and more so, one's on the recruiting side, one's on the sales side. So
Sure.
cost per acquisition of customer, and that takes a few different metrics, right? Because you got to know what your labor cost is, you got to know what your lead cost is. So there's a few things you got to know before you get there. But knowing your cost per acquisition of customer is huge, right? Because you could feel like you're the worst marketer in the world, and you might be converting at a rate where if you dialed it up, you're the best and highest converting, most efficient out there. Vice versa. For the recruiting side, I'd say it's cost per application, right? So cost per application or cost per conversation rather, and sometimes it's hard to track on conversation. Just because if you can get more applications in your fold, it becomes an equation, right? And if you can have more conversations or more opportunities, I use the kind of the slogan, if you will, with my agents. I'm like, you want opportunities, you don't want obligations. Because if you only have one or two resumes in front of you, right? Or if you only have one or two conversations, that's all you have to choose from. So definitely give yourself opportunities.
I love what you were saying about like conversation tracking. So it's
Mm,
one thing to understand like the cost to acquire a customer, right? You got your leads, you got your ones that actually convert, and you have a version of your CAC. One thing we do at Dope is we track meaningful conversations. And so very similar to what you're talking about on like conversation tracking, and depending on the lead source, we have different metrics to do that. Cause like we might generate a couple hundred leads a day for certain ones of our services, but we go to like, what is a meaningful conversation? And the
mm,
way we do that in our CRM is we have qualifiers where like, one, either you could get a hold of the lead or you can't. It's one or the other. Like I got 20 leads assigned to me today. I got a hold of 8 of them. So there's a metric. But then that conversation, was that a quick like, oh yeah, dude, I'm not interested, or I didn't mean to fill out the form, or hey, I want a lower quantity than you want, whatever the metric is. But like when you have a connectivity rate on your leads, and then
mm.
you have like whatever your definition is, this is the joy of business. It's all a blank canvas. You can literally make up all of this shit as you go. And so what we made up for our meaningful conversations is like there's an amount of time on the phone, but we have in our CRM, there's things called like playbooks. So you can have like questions that are answered during a call. We start
Smart.
getting into like deeper like lead scoring now based on the level of questions that can be answered. I'll take it a little further as like I've been talking about our customer journey a lot as like the Henry Ford assembly line. Like how predictable is it where a customer goes through the same exact journey through their lead flow process, through their customer journey. And one thing we've done is like ensuring that each team member knows what their role is, what the person's role is before them that touched that customer, and what the person's role is after. Like we literally like made note cards, and we're like testing around these things to ensure that like when someone comes in, and let's go to this example of like a meaningful conversation. Lead came in, I asked them some qualifying questions. I want to make sure I had the answers. If I didn't, I ensured them that I was going to get them connected with the person that would. But taking it to where that like conversation tracking or the understanding of like asking your team, like, what is a meaningful conversation? What information do I need as the next person receiving this person to like answer their questions, to get them what they need, to ensure that like we are the solution they're looking for in whatever they inquired about. And I think that at times that can kind of get like lost in the sauce because it's like, how many leads do we generate? How many leads do we close? Well, sometimes there's like a lot more to look at and analyze depending on your customer journey.
Mm.
How long does it take? Like what's your deal stage process? Do you usually close someone or have a conversation in a day or 2 days, or does it take a month of talking to someone for you?
Right. And that's what I love about AI these days too, because we work with a company called Insure You too, and it's insane what you can do with it because they score the call, right? You and I are talking about like, hey, we want a meaningful conversation. You can measure tonality, you can measure, okay, content. Is there follow up to it? Like you were saying, like, is there homework that has to be done? Because that's a big part of it, right? If you promise something on a call and then you don't deliver,
Yeah.
man, that's never a good experience. So, yeah, AI these days too, not to get off on a different topic, but I can see that playing in helping our tracking and our metrics of everything.
What's so important, Keith, that I think that like people understand to give themselves permission to do is like go a little bit deeper. Like you listen to podcasts or you're reading books or you're watching a reel about someone playing with AI in their business. You're like, how the hell are they doing that? It's like if I've learned anything in the past, Dope's going into his 5th year in business, and if I've really learned anything in the past year, it's like it's one thing to like, need advice or need someone to tell you like, oh yeah, what you're saying out loud doesn't completely sound like crazy talk, or like, yeah, that kind of makes sense enough for you to continue your decisions. But when I hear about like AI, or I hear about like diving a little bit more into like a sales process or something that's been kind of like a foundation in a business for a certain amount of time, sometimes we just got to give ourselves permission to shake the box up a little bit and go a little bit deeper. Cause like I saw your eyes light up when I started talking about the meaningful
Yeah.
conversations. And it's like, this is something that took me years to explain. And when I would go through it with people, they're like, you're overanalyzing. What are you talking about? Like, where is it at? And I know that like we've been open for a couple years and just
Well,
now implementing
yeah,
this scoring.
exactly what you're saying. Like it's deeper, it's meaningful conversation because you can game it so quick. Like say you are in any sales organization, insurance, it's quotes, right? Other places, it's still quotes or like met with a prospect, but half the time it's not
Yeah.
interested. Or maybe it's like you can just tell like it's going nowhere and that person didn't engage with anything, didn't information gather or build rapport. It's good to have that measure. I love that, man.
I had a mentor of mine, one of the founders of House Call Pro. His name's Roland. Roland was telling me like in any sales process, you can have these four pillars, and they're all tweakable. Like I have like buildings inside of my business made of these four pillars, a little bit adjusted and different, but it was in a let's go to like a demo process, like booking calls, getting people to show up to have a transaction happen at the end. How many actions are taken? So like phone calls made, emails sent, Facebook messages responded to, whatever. How many actions taken? How many demos were booked? How many demos were attended? And how many demos were sold? Like that's simple. But then in between those pillars, there's little stopping points where you can analyze like the connectivity between those metrics and look at like optimizing some things. Are those outbounds? Are you tweaking them a little bit differently? For the amount of demos you're booking, is there a certain amount during a certain time of day? For the amount of demos attended, like, are you tweaking your building follow-up process to increase your attendance rate? And then on your closes, like, are there things you can do? And it sounded like you're talking about like Insure You. They do like probably some level of like AI analysis to do a
Yeah,
feedback to help. And I've seen these in other industries too, where like AI is so powerful nowadays. You can literally record your conversations, feed it in, and be like, what could we do better to get a better result? As just like scratching the surface. And it's like, I'll go back to there are these foundational things that have always worked in business since the 1900s, since covered wagons, since whenever, where it's like these things just work. Timeless industries, timeless verticals, insurance, home service, some type of auto transportation sales, selling things to kids. There's more of those coming every day. But it's like these things that have worked forever in these timeless verticals. It's like, how can you give permission to take technology and use methods and systems that have always been in place and just optimize?
right. 100%.
Yeah. So, Keith, if someone listening wants to build a business that lasts longer than them, what's one of the first, like, what's one of the first moves they would need to make?
I would say call me. Call me, text
Whoa.
me, email. But I would say in general, right? So let's say they didn't want to do insurance and they just talking about any general industry. I would say you gotta have distributed leadership. So what I mean by that is I've seen great leaders, you and I both have seen great businesses built. And when it comes down to it, as soon as that person's gone or out of the picture, that it falls apart, right? It really a great leader, in my estimation, makes the leaders around them built to last, right? Where it's passing it down. I use the football equation. Like Sean McVay's a really good football coach for the Rams. He's already got a coaching tree a mile long of just good, solid ones. And that's where actually, like, versus a Bill Belichick, right? I see Bill Belichick. Uh, you hear all the time about how all the coaches that came from his coaching tree don't don't have like over a 500 record or something to that effect. That's a big difference because if you're building people to last, right, that's going to be a huge difference in those companies that you care about. If you truly care about the industry and the company you're with, you help the leaders. If you care about the profit and kind of the transactions and that type of stuff, you focus on okay, how do we be the most efficient? And you can do both.
Absolutely.
Um, Yeah, but big long soapbox per se, and like, hey, invest in people.
Amen. I mean, like, if if you are in the business of making other people's lives better, then everyone grows around you. And there's so many, like cliche quotes around this stuff. I just always like to go to like steal like an artist. There are people really good at leading, at managing, and empowering. And if you can take a little bit of what's inside of you, sprinkle that on top of some things that already work, I mean, the end of that road is usually success, not only for yourself and your business, but for the others around you. And I think that's what a lot of us
Yeah.
want. Keith, I like to end each show with a quote, and one that grabbed me when I was thinking about like kind of what you're about, your message, and some discussions that we've had is legacy is not leaving something for people, it's leaving something in people. It's Peter
Mm.
Strokel that quote is from, a former telecom executive who often is referred to as the most connected man in America. But what really sets Peter apart isn't just his network. It's how he uses it to pour into others. Strobel's life work is all about helping leaders lead with purpose, integrity, and heart. And Keith, that quote really spoke to me when I was thinking about like what you're about, what you empower, the culture you create. And so, Keith, how do people online find you, get a hold of yourself? And is there anything that you want to plug as we wrap up the show?
Yeah, I mean, I've been with farmers now for 13 years. I'm lucky enough that they're responsible for everything good that I've gotten over that time, and they have such a good opportunity. Um, I mean, my phone number, my email, I'm sure like it'll be out there. So any way you want to contact me or my team, we're always looking for hungry entrepreneurs, whether they're entry level, they have the acumen. There's so many different ways for everybody to leverage this as long as they got the heart for it.
Keith, I appreciate you joining us today, my friend. Everyone, thank you for watching, listening, or however you consume the content. And please join us next week for a new episode of Dope Conversations.